grappled one of them, and that was thrown on the ground, and his knees was on the breast of the dead person within a second. And very interestingly, there was barrels and the barrels of the guns up, down, side. He was surrounded by soldiers within minutes. Then the officer said, "Go away." And then and after that incident, they killed the cow and they turned it, but and left the people there. And after about 60 years, the Japanese who came here to identify the bones of their dead soldiers, they have requested for identification of that particular person. They identified that house according to a map born by them. They just identified with the help of these trees. We call it Sanakonang. In English it is called banyan tree, local map, and they exactly identified that house. They say, "Bring anybody, come, please bring anybody inside this house." And somebody come, "No." If anybody remains, "No." And the last time they bring out one very, very old person. "Yes, this is the person." They say, "This is the person." Then the officers asked, "Do you remember an incident which happened during a World War? There was a battle for your cow. You put down one man on the ground, and the guns are surrounded you, and then suddenly you go away. Do you remember?" By the time the man was on the last leg of his life, he said yes, just turning his head, and then the officer said, "I was the commanding officer. I was the commanding officer. That was during the wartime. I have no money. Now I have come just to pay the price of your cow. To pay the price of your cow. How much you want for your cow?"
Thank you, thank you.
The man said,
Raghu,
"No."
I think this is probably where we segue into the question that you wanted to perhaps...
It's a perfect connection to a story that Mr. Shishak once told me, a similar meeting he had during the war and then much later with a very interesting figure named Lieutenant General Iwaichi Fujiwara. It began when, as he said, he was working as a peon and a runner for the 4th Marathas. But then his luck changed and he was captured by a Japanese patrol. And I think he should say what happened next.
Madadi Shumtawani. British Army, Indian Army, Ching the Diloere, later. Adukanda Apo, Pujowarana, Nang British Ki, Piontoba to Yarwe.
Fujiwara said you cannot be a peon for the British or they'll beat you up.
Adumana Abu A Gimitan Krapango and 80 Ukru area the any peon Wakabini.
So instead help us and say we can be a peon in the Ukrul area.
Last the mana Shangzhen came Ama 3,000 labor Chaka the man Abu Burakre. And the last day Mr. Shisha after Second World War she loeraga. Ay nang bukaw ni nang angang nang kumbado amata sulete ayam no shi haina mana last sayonara haina to the Asia company masu company altige Japan Hiroshima da able space pinaba aina able mana pachano welcome Tauraga a Hiroshima Chale.
You want to translate that or should I? Okay. I think it's that Fujiwara had... You met him many years later?
They said goodbye at Sanching, and after that, but years later, he invited him to speak in Hiroshima.
About meeting him again in Kohima.
Aduna ma ekwelwena Japan singa she ekweka mokwelwena kapa amale maramti hauchi ekwena ngam ne ko lakpani do ngam tre ekwe supply later. No way nationality, power nationality has the job later. Russian what create I don't know ekram the quite
we are going to leave now because we have run out of ammunition and arms. We've even run out of food, and therefore we're going to be retreating, was what Fujiwara said.
Aduna 18 April da aina pairiba mashe kankhui da ke yamna atomba ching aduda flag ashe man yungmani yunglaga V force haina mokai partition to kai pire aduna ashti pamwe ena khunlaga e yung ho shure e gidale
the Japanese established a camp in Kankhui, and this flag was unfurled by the Japanese. But the P-Force came and destroyed the camp, and this flag was collected by Mr. Shishak, and it's still there with him now.
Kohima
the Fujiwara say Chahi Khara Matumda, Chahi Yamagi Matumda, Amuk Unabibara.
Ado 1972 Mana Manipur Ekoyoji, what they had later me. Adam Quay 1972 Fujiwara and 32 Army ex-Army Shingo Equa Imphal Yorokre.
There were 32 ex-army people who came in 1972 with Fujiwara.
Ado mana ebo habidi nang laktawiyate la o nang unaninge haina e chepakanda.
So you have to come. I want to meet you. The message came.
Mokaina appointment pitre.
And but did he not?
Unabiyatre haina.
You cannot meet him.
Nungai ne tudi e chelakena. Kohima da inauripa yumda. Lerega cemetery, Kohima war cemetery, at the Quaitun Labor Kanda, Makai party, Imparty La Eva.
So he was at the war cemetery when the war party showed up, the visiting party.
Adoina, Mashi Fujiwara, Yobra have the.
Is Fujiwara here?
Ya, Fujara Krambono Hariga, Iwachi Fujiwara,
Which Fujiwara? Iwachi Fujiwara is.
Edi Magi, Pioni Hariga.
Used to be his peon.
Toda Kauro. Now, Imphal da Ki Unatabunoya.
Why did you meet him in Imphal?
Mashanungai Tabiki Unatre.
Oh, he was not feeling well.
I think I don't know mana, Aya, and mana able lupa, dishing a home. Cup tuna. I don't know. Mana able hide. Matati Yamnungade, Ado Nang Chilashi in part that again, Angam Kranare to the Echepayaro Hayatuna. At the day, Schweidena Hiroshima, Nagasaki, a product to be a day, Nang Yong Tabina Mushua Yaro Hana, Pakipara Crash Shaduna, a 1997, a Nagasaki. Hiroshima,
so he said he gave him 3,000 rupees, and then he said, let's go back to Imphal. He says, no, I can't come, I have other things to do. So he said instead he invited him to Hiroshima, and then so he visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1977.
Adomana quite able Nishimba Amana Somurai. Maya Somurai de Chat Lampaki. Ma Chat Lampaki Tankat Pashuatre, come Togni. Nang low crow, Haina, Mana able picking a hochishu, Tame. Adona.
So he gave me a samurai sword.
Adona, Hochik, Loin and Mayam the Samurai ka, Hochi flag ashik the Magda museum later of you. Tata de Lacte, Yam Lai Heba.
So now with the flag and with the samurai that Fujiwara gave him, it's like a museum, so he's now creating a museum in Shangsha.
Atoga, a quite important person in the Abu Shore. nang kri ge museum tham da bor da ena cha ma hele ena complaint to kra chan pe du na ma sha pi bor shu chau ra shu kra phajana ba museum amma to she hai wa da sho ya da ho shu la ya do
So the student refused to make
yes
a
na
museum.
ena collection oi ba top mari ngak tani Manipur da la shop pa she top mari e do e yum da tham dun phajana le ba kan adu da amu ga da shu PSF ke inspector e khoi ye amana laura ga pale da thame adu ga adu bureau ha shu ya ke kaire adla
Masi kanogi Fujiwara onabada pabo masi mana nang sisak ni habasi masak kangde. Ado nang kana no nang sisak ni se kana maine takadaba no habagi wali ma aingon da ta.
Fujiwara ke 80 pione mana e wa hai mana na ye khong krambe na kra shoge nang na awe bak shishan ne din nang long pen si yen ke hai ne yen da
So if you have the real Shishak, I want to see your leg to see if there's a scar.
ko na tu na company
And then he raised him and he wept.
e bu company ado yam nu ngai da na tu di nang na ke kumba amma a pick ba wa shu a chow ba wa shu pha bu ba shi di na khoi ye si ya roi ma shi di museum amma shem kro du ga tham na ba kan hai ro ha de e na di kana wa hai ne na
Yeah. So I hope the thing with the museum will work out. So the gentleman over here, you had a question. Please go ahead. You, yes, sir. You with the white shirt, necktie? Yes. Yeah.
Hello. Very good evening. Ma'am, this is a question for you as you are associated with travel industry. Ma'am, here we are promoting war pilgrimage or war tourism here. So we've been told that people from UK, they're advised not to travel to this side of the country, but it's still safe to travel to Kohima. Is it so, ma'am? Don't you think as a private initiation, you could take this out and could promote Manipur more? We got a lot more to show.
Exactly, it's something. It's a problem of perception. It's not a problem of reality. I mean, there are cases where it isn't. It is a problem that lots of not lots, but other areas have. I mean, Kashmir is another one in point that actually the British Foreign Office currently have an advisory out not to go to Kashmir, or you can go to Srinagar but not to Gulmarg. Well, excuse me, what is the issue in Gulmarg? As you know, hundreds of domestic tourists go there. It is a problem of perception. Actually, Nagaland, Manipur, the northeast, even Assam is linked together, and people will see an incident, particularly in Assam, in the areas of Assam where there's unsettled troubles, and that'll stop the whole of the Assam tourism. But I don't think it's insurmountable, and I think I often use the Sri Lanka as an example, that throughout the Tamil War, Sri Lanka actually grew its tourism hugely. And it never actually, I don't really understand why, but it was people's perception. They wanted to go to Sri Lanka enough, or they thought the Tamil problems were in the north and they were going to the south. So I think it is surmountable. Of course, for you, any Manipuris as a whole, you want a peaceful country. But I definitely think that people are working to get tourists here. If they come to Nagaland, there is absolutely no reason why they can't come through. The story, Kohima is not the story. The story is Kohima and Imphal and indeed the road into Burma. And I would like to see, the Moray, the Burma crossing open further, and that would complete the whole story, of which Manipur would be very central to the complete story. So, hopefully going forward, things here improve for you, will improve for everybody. It is a problem of perception, but India, I mean, it happens elsewhere in the world, and you just have to keep on persevering, and hopefully, you have an active tourism department with people like myself actually bringing people here, people going back and telling stories, then hopefully we can improve the situation. Because I think Manipur, forgetting the military history, the small amount I've seen so far has so much to offer.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
I couldn't see you. When I heard you, I knew it was you. Another question, anyone from this side? Any question? And feel free to share any family memories, because Raghu has been sharing this through his wonderful book. Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir, over there. Yes.
Hello. I'm from Nambol. Memories which my old grandfather, which is 92, 93 years old, who narrated in our childhood. One of his brothers called Ningombam Tomba Singh. He was usually dealing with some sort of Kwamana Yonba, like small business. And during 30s, he just went for the business, but he never returned. And without his dead body, he was cremated in the home. Rituals were performed in the house without his dead body. He never returned home. He was killed in the war, and his brothers who are now living, he told that he was killed in the war, and that's a part of the story. And one thing is, my grandfathers, they grew up loitering, playing around in fields in the Foising village, which is the place where Korifava lies. They told that during the war, the battle was fought between Japanese and the British. The British were on the hill of Korifava, and the Japs were in the Maibam hills, and they were firing. Firings were happening between the two. And my grandfathers, they dug up some comb, like pits, and they hid inside those dug up places, fearing from the bullets and bombs that may come up. Actually, they might not have protected them, but they thought that they would be safe inside the dug up pits, and they were hiding inside those dug up places. And one interesting thing is, when the firing stopped, they used to go around and look out for some foods like oranges, huge trucks. Not trucks exactly, I don't know, but some huge pile of oranges which were thrown out by the Britishers, which were not eatable, like Patlava Komla Singh. The grandfathers, their colleagues were finding it very tasty and loitering around eating those rotten oranges and fruits which were already thrown out by these things, Goras, and they were enjoying those during that time. That's all. That's my memories narrated by my grandfather in my childhood, and he's still there, 93 years old. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wish you were your grandfather who was with us today. And it doesn't have to be really about Manipur, but one thing I did want to say is, as the IMASI Foundation, which has really begun with literature in mind, but is kind of growing a little bit, one is immediately struck, even from your preface, about the extraordinary literary quality of your book. And Yamuk Nimai has also referred to how thrilling the book is. Can you just tell us a little bit about the literary style of your book? Because you do inhabit the inner space, the inner mind of the characters. You put dialogue in their mouths. You tell us what they're thinking. How did you evolve this, and what was the process of your developing your literary take on this novel, on this book?
Thanks, Somi. Yeah, it's an important question when it comes to this book, because, as Dr. Nimai said, there has been a fair amount of writing about India's Second World War. So it's mainly writing done by the military establishment, and it was mainly done right after the war concluded. And unfortunately, a lot of it is quite difficult to read, and it isn't going to hold the interest of lay readership. So that's one of the reasons that these stories have fallen apart. So what I want to do is I wanted to write this story, and I wanted it to appeal to people who like to read novels, people who like reading fiction. And I've started writing this book my first attempt was to write a novel. But when I did that, I realized A, that writing fiction is very difficult, and B, that the real events that took place in their lives and the real events that took place in the country were much more unexpected, and I could never do justice to them. What I could invent would never do justice to what had actually happened. So there was no point in my inventing anything. So it had to be non-fiction. But the truth is, the questions that are raised by the Indian participation in the Second World War are very subtle questions. They're subjective questions. Why fight for one side or the other? How do you choose your loyalty? Do you choose loyalty or do you choose freedom? And the answers to those questions are not necessarily to be found in bald fact. And therefore, I had to allow myself a license, a certain liberty, to go into the minds of my characters. And I called it forensic nonfiction, or a forensic license, because the way I saw it was, I had these three men. I didn't really know who they were. I didn't know how they had got to where they ended up. But I had to track them, I had to find out. It was sort of a detective job. And the answer is a case that I'm making. I wouldn't ever call this a biography, any more than I would call it an academic treatment of the Second World War. But it's my story. It's the case that I'm making for what really happened and what happened in the minds of Indians caught in that conflict. So everything that is rendered in the physical world, including dialogue, by the way, their movements, the events of their lives, the assignments and the kind of engagements of the units, all of that is completely fact, down to the detailing of the environment and so on. But what's seen through their eyes, what happens in their minds, their thoughts and their emotions and the questions that assail them are things that I took the liberty to write in, because I don't think that it's fiction even then. I didn't invent any of it. A lot of it was suggested by the material, and I just took and I just interpreted it and placed it where I thought it belonged.
Thank you. Certainly it's really successful because it's so vivid. The imagery, the sounds, the smells. I mean, from Calicut to Egypt to Manipur, is in northwest frontier in Afghanistan and so on. And so we have requested Raghu Karnad to perhaps sign a few books for us out in the lobby, if you are interested in having some of the books that HarperCollins was kind enough to send us on this occasion. And I want to say that non-fiction, fiction, well, it's a good book. Thank you. And so on behalf of the IMASI Foundation, and especially on behalf of the Department of Tourism of the Government of Manipur, I want to thank you all for coming. I'm especially thankful to Nidhi Tripathi, the Secretary of the Department of Tourism at the Government of Manipur, for hosting this event. And of course, a wonderful staff, Shyam Poonia, who's probably taping me on his iPad right now. I see him there, and wonderful Rachel. Thank you so much for all your help. And we've been really energized to work with a very enthusiastic team called the E-Team that has been organizing the two last days, and Andro, as well as this one, as a celebration of World Tourism Day. And we thought that World War II, tourism, memories, how it's now translating into travel and tourism, because